It's good to talk to you once again, James. How have you been, and what's going on up there in the at the ranch, rather, at the foot of Mount Adams?
Oh, we've had some major challenges like everybody else, it seems, but we've had some pretty intense legal challenges where we've had certain groups over here tell us that basically we don't have any right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to practice our spiritual beliefs, and no right to privacy, things like that. And so we've had to kind of hold our own on that, like most Americans are, having to set some boundaries, saying enough's enough. But, that being aside, we went through a snowpocalypse up here as well with some, heavy snowstorms followed by rain and ice. And a lot of the trees here actually snapped in half and came down like missiles. We got through, one went right through our roof on our meditation building. And yesterday I just finished the repairs on that. But it's been quite a challenge, on every level, not just social, economic level, but the physical levels as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. Last time we talked, James, there was indication that this was kind of going on in the local community around you guys when it comes to them maybe not liking for whatever reason what you guys are doing there. Has the pressure on that then gone up? Is that what you're saying? And have you been able to hold these people back, or what's going on there?
Yeah, basically, due to the work of Nate and Spencer and Dean Clifford and some people like that, we've actually been able to hold it back. And the local people, what's really interesting, are very much behind us. I just met with a whole group of the town locals here, the old patriarchs, you might say. And, I got the total thumbs up. They said, keep going. We've seen them. We know they're here. Our whole family's seen them. Keep telling the truth. And so even in some of the fundamentalist aspects of this, these people are actually behind us, which is amazing. And they really like that we are, making a stand for our own basic freedoms and rights. So on that level, we have total support. They had special meetings. They had 2 major meetings for a conditional use permit, and not one person spoke out against us. So, you would think, and they really publicized it. So basically, we have the full support of the town. Really helps them out economically and in other ways as well. They love the people that come here to the ranch. They're always very pleasant and they're very they tip well and keep the economy going here. So basically, there's just a couple people that have some strong religious beliefs and some very good old boy networks that have picked up the sword and are just playing out their own personal agendas, which is really illegal on every level.
It's amazing people have the time and the energy, and specifically in these times, to focus on these issues when you guys are you are minding your own business. You're not harming anybody. It's just it's ridiculous to me, James.
Well, it's an extreme waste of public resources as well, and taxpayers' money, to do things like this. It's, they could be repairing the roads and doing some other things of that nature, but they squander these resources on these totalitarian programs that they're running.
When did you guys have this snowstorm, by the way? Because I've heard from a lot of people around the world, talking to them, that it's been fairly mild this year overall. Same thing here. But when did the snow hit you?
Well, this was probably, I'm really bad on time for some reason, but because up here at the ranch, every day is kind of like the same. We don't go by calendar so much, and other than being on radio shows like this one, I wouldn't even know what day it was. But it was probably last month. We're still, we've been cleaning up. We're still cleaning up the disaster, and we're still having light, some winds and flurries of the snow, but. I would say about a good month ago, it hit really hard here, and I've never seen so much damage. It looked like Godzilla, came up the highway and just snapped every tree and every telephone pole, and we had 9 days without power here, and they had crews from everywhere here, as far as California, were here actually trying to repair the damage. So it was pretty extensive.
It's really chaotic times in a way. It's been, as I said, mild primarily this winter. Obviously, there was a big freeze and a lot of snow, a big dump of snow over certain parts of Europe, actually further south than we are. Right here up in Sweden right now. But what do you think all this is about? Is it tied into what's going on right now? We have massive solar activity happening at the moment of this recording anyway, so I hope the line holds, by the way.
Yeah, X-class flare coming in. Yeah, we've had, it's a combination of things. One, I don't know if you've ever had Susan Joy Renison. Have you had her on your show?
Sure have, yeah.
Yeah, she's an astrophysicist, but she is onto it on the physics side of things, and actually understands that we are going through a time of great change. We used to be getting hit by outside energy bursts, coming into our system probably maybe 50 times a day. Now it's up to 500. And we are coming into an alignment with galactic plane, which has huge magnetic fields that are involving the sun, which is actually creating this solar maximum that we're going through. NASA keeps saying, oh, it's going to tone down. Their lead guys now are saying, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's going to tone down. But they issued reports before that saying that, look, this is going to be a biggie all the way up to, peaking at 2012 and then starting to diminish around 13. So all of this is connected, and when these flares or these coronal mass ejections hit the Earth, the first thing they affect is the bioelectric fields around the human body, and they start doing DNA changes, everything. It's there's a lot of science behind that, but people will go into emotional outbursts. They'll be processing their old wounds and traumas, and they're going to be doing it both individually and collectively as a society. So, and that's going to tie into the social and economic changes that we're seeing right now. And all the stuff that's been suppressed and the tyranny, all of this stuff is coming right up in our faces to take a look at.
Yeah, it sure is.
And see. So we're seeing that process. And then you have an increase in crazy erratic weather. The jet streams are changing. The storms are being much more activated. I know Dutch Sense on his website talks about these huge storms that are building, and you can go and check them out. And then when you see the solar flare go off at the same time, I go, uh-oh, this is going to be huge tornadoes coming up. And sure enough, it's exactly what happened. They had more damage and more tornadoes than ever. And I think they're having like Category 5 or something tornadoes, which are never heard of before in the past few years.
That's right. There was one in the state here just a while back now, moving through, I don't know how many states in total, but I can't remember where it began. If it was Kansas or further up north, and went all the way down to Alabama, I think, caused some great damage, and can't recall either how many people were killed, but there were quite a few actually.
Oh, yeah. It's sad, but I mean, these things are coming, and we've all known about it and been warning people about it for some time. And unfortunately, the mainstream media, thank God there's people like you out there and other avenues of alternative media that can get this message out and let people know that these changes are coming, and there's a science behind it, and we need to pay attention to it.
That's right. We have much more energy being fed into the whole system, and this creates effects on the weather system. And not only that, as you said, we have as soon as we have X-class flares, we have disruptions in the Earth's geomagnetic field, basically. And of course, as you said, our own magnetic field is connected, if you will, with this field. So when the Earth is affected or impacted, our own feels it in a way. And this plays out in many different ways. People feel more insecure, more scared. There's kind of a havoc in the mind as well. And I have heard from other people too that there's been studies on this actually, and it just shows that it's much more difficult in a sense to get certain things done. It might actually be a period of creativity, if you will, but it's definitely not the time for the time when you actually implement the creativity and actually build something or make something constructive out of it. So it's very very chaotic. That's my point when all of this is going on, James.
Yes, definitely. The way that it impacts people, what I've seen is Stanford Research actually did some research on this with monkeys, and they exposed them to fluctuation in the magnetic fields, and they exhibited behavior from comatose to self-mutilation. So I mean, we don't have to behave like monkeys. We can override this spiritually and mentally. We can override these things. But what I've seen is that now is the time to really use this energy to go within and release our own inner demons and stop passing our pain balls around, and own our own wounds and traumas and let them come up and use our own higher selves, whatever you want to call it, God, Spirit, Creator, to help us to heal and release, these old wounds and traumas.
I mean, this is a time when so many people are externalizing most of the inner issues, and of course there is a truth, if you will. I believe in that too. We need to identify what's going on externally, and the fact that there's been so much corruption and all this dirt is coming up to the surface right now as well. But there might be a fallacy, if you will, in only externalizing evil, and if we don't reflect inward, as you say, James, we're actually missing an awful lot of what is going on as well. So how do you deal with some of this? How in a time like this, when we have anonymous crashing websites, we have the protests groups out in the streets, Occupy, whatever, everything, and it's chaotic. So it's easy to be drawn into that as well, to kind of just go with the flow of the mainstream in a sense, right?
Yeah, I see this all as a good thing. I have a friend, Mihal Ledwith. I love what he came up to me one day and he says, "So how are things going, in your life? Is everything calm and working and everything?" And I go, "Well, no, we're having some challenges." And he goes, "Good,
Yeah,
and he said, "Because you're not going anywhere if everything is just totally calm and working. You're just part of the herd consciousness." So it is interesting. So I see this as a good thing. The chaos is actually a necessity. Things go from chaos to equilibrium and back to chaos. And as we move up this vibrational continuum and this awakening healing process, we're going to go through levels of chaos and then equilibrium, chaos, equilibrium, until we finally hit this one level where things start harmonizing, where we actually do live in harmony with each other and the earth.
So let's try to connect some of this with what is going on with both, the visitors, the sightings that people have around the world. And a while back here, James, you published an article that's been circulated around the web called "The Last Book on UFOs." An article, obviously, though, but goes into some interesting stuff. And why don't we just kind of run through some of the stuff that you talk about in the beginning? And you say that the reasons for the title is because off-worlders will soon be telling us straight about who they are and why they are here, basically. Tell us about that. What's going on with that, James?
Well, what's interesting is that, humanity is trying to project their ways and their beliefs and reference points onto the ETs. And we fall very short of who these beings are. And I've seen over and over again, right now we have some fundamentalist groups, and their program is that everything is demonic. There are no benevolent off-worlders. It's all demonic. There is no other life out there in the cosmos or the universe. And this is all Satan and his program to deceive us. And that is such a limited belief structure. There's really no research in that, other than one's nose buried in a Bible. And, if you go into ancient history, you can see that we've been interacted with over and over again, and some of those interactions were very benevolent and helped us to evolve, and some were a little self-serving and malevolent. But the overall majority of it is benevolent, especially that's coming in right now. And the problems that we're having right now are not because of somebody coming in to invade us right now. They've been here for quite some time. It's a matter of them actually given eviction orders by the more benevolent ones, the spiritually and technologically advanced ones that are coming in now. And what's interesting is these groups is that if you don't rise to the occasion, you're not even going to see them. You're not even going to know who they are or how they work. They work in more unseen ways. And it's very important if we do want to know who they are, and if we do want to work with them and work in the highest and best good of humanity and the earth, and work in harmony with each other and the planet, then we have to rise to the occasion to even understand them, to even have a clue as to who they are. So that's one of the problems we have right now, especially in the UFO community. We have one group that is saying, it's all back engineered technology. You haven't, since the Hitler's been back engineering that stuff all the way back in the 20s, and then they have another group out there that's saying, that it's all malevolent. They're here, they're abducting us and stealing our DNA and sperm and ovum and going, eggs and whatever. But and then you have another group saying, oh, they're just watching, they're just here observing, what's going on and watching us evolve and things like that. And then you have another group saying they're all benevolent and they're here to assist us in this awakening healing process, this cosmic drama that's unfolding right now, which is cosmic. I mean, the energies behind this are just amazing. So what's sad is there is some low-level ET conduct going on. There has been for a long time. It's if you take the consciousness of tyranny and the puppets here on the ground, they've actually sold their soul to these other negative factions, and that's a small piece of the pie right now, because the benevolent ones and the people that are waking up right now are greatly outweigh this other group. But it's sad that people can't work together and cooperate and put all the information on the table and then look at it. But unfortunately, the old saying that the lie, travels twice around the earth till the truth has time to tie its shoes, and or the negative, you can say the dark or the negative gets the press all the time. If it bleeds, it leads. And
that's right. So where does one find truth in all this when there's so many different potentialities out there? There's so many different groups, allegedly. There's so many different researchers and claims, of course, and it's very difficult to know, specifically when we listen to other people, James.
Oh yeah, truth is always unfolding. That's the thing, is like not being fixed or held to some belief. What I say, there's always a lie in belief, it's in the middle there. And so basically what I look at it, it's like an orange. You peel it, you eat the meat and you spit out the seeds. And the only way you can really get at the truth, I think, is to develop yourself spiritually and get your own inner sensitivity going, so you can sense, how this feels for you, how does this work for you. You eventually, when you work on it, making your own personal God, spirit, creator connection, whatever you want to call that, and you become more sensitive, you can sense the energies behind something, whether it's true or not, and you get your own, for lack of better words, BS meter going.
Yeah.
And you can take this within and just say, this is, there's a lot of truth in here, but the big spin is on the end of this. And that's unfortunately what a lot of psyops do and disinformation people do, is they'll give you, 70% truth or even 90% truth, and then they'll put the big flip on the end to steer everything in the direction they want it to go.
How much of all of this do you think is conscious, cover up or disinformation? Because I think a lot of, maybe I'm too generous, but in a lot of cases, I think there's a lot of people who genuinely, they follow their path, their thread of information, and they're giving that out there. And as long as they have an approach like what you just mentioned, which is fairly, humble in that sense, that, find your own truth, listen to if it works for you, do your own research and validate for yourself, and then move on from there. But if it's prefaced in such a way, I don't see any harm in it. But what do you think when it comes to potential conscious misleaders and disinformationists out there? Is that a lot, do you think, or is it just very few?
It's much more than you would think. There's several things I've seen, and there's some very top researchers, and I don't want to go into name calling or whatever, but basically do some research and ask them how they feel about 911. Ask them how they feel about population control. ask them how they feel about eugenics and the transhumanization program, and then look at who they're hanging out with. Are they hanging out with the big New World Order boys? Where's their funding coming from? And we really need to ask these questions, because you would be shocked if you did the research on where people are coming from, and also if they have a background in military intelligence. Take a look at that. Did they come out of military intelligence or some kind of agency or whatever? Because you'll find even major reporting centers are straight out of NSA. So
that's a good point, because that's always a kind of a delicate issue in a sense. In one way, I don't want to be guilty of accusing them. This is guilt by association, basically, just because of the fact that they have a background in the military. But at the same time, it could be true that then, of course, they're still tied to the military to give out information. But we can also kind of throw out the baby with the bathwater if there actually are true insiders actually speaking out. So again, it's back to that point where we need to run it through our own filters, and we can't expect anybody else, I believe anyway, to tell us what the case is. We just have to listen to how it feels when we hear it, if it's genuine.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people here. Actually, Robert Salas was here, and he was the one at Maelstrom where they shut down the bases. He saw a beautiful ship flying all around, bright green ship flying all around the mountain, and he's actually gone on record and talked about it. And he said too the same thing. He said, the program I was running, in the beginning, most of these guys are running a program it's a threat. We need to deal with this. That's the program. So if you're coming at it from a military consciousness or from a victim consciousness, that's how you're going to see things. Those are the reference points that your research is taking you in that direction. But there are people like I think Robert and a few other people that are transcending that and saying, wait a second, these guys are telling us that you are nuts, having these nuclear weapons and this many of them, and with a trigger, and they came and over to Russia, and they took over their whole system and ran it up to zero and then shut the system off. And they were unplugging things and hacking wires and trying to shut it down, and couldn't do it. They totally took control over their system and showed them how they could override it. And they've done the same thing on our bases. They've gone and totally deactivated them. They've shot them down in flight. Showed over and over again that they can spin circles around these rockets that we have and take them out at any time and drop them anywhere, anytime. So basically, a lot of these people, and I commend them in the military that are saying, hey, they're coming out and speaking about it for very noble reasons, because they want to see, the fuelless energy technology get out. They want to see the pollution stopped. They want to see peace coming to the earth, and they have some very noble reasons, and I totally commend those that are doing that. But we have to look at an agenda that's been played out for a long time, and that is an agenda of keeping a threat going. Make them evil. We're running out of terrorists, and we're running out of countries to invade. So
that's right. That's why they're turning the attention inward, both in Europe but also in America right now. And now the everyday person is the terrorist who doesn't agree with where the decisions of government is heading, basically.
Exactly. And Carol Rosin has brought out a lot of really good information about the Werner von Braun, and he said he laid out all of these threats that they were going to come across, all the different countries we were going to invade a long time ago. And then he said basically that the next big threat when they run out of terrorists and countries is going to be the alien, invasion card. And they may use Project Bluebeam and several other things to try to play that out. And hopefully enough people are speaking out about that now that once it's all over the, when the masses know about it, they don't play those cards. When they've been exposed to a certain level, they realize, well, we can't play this card because it's going to give up the whole game.
How quickly do you think this will go? Many people now, and understandably so, are eyeing the Zion Olympics in 2012 here in London. Obviously, that this could potentially be a big point where they're pushing, you know, on one of these potential scenarios. What do you see from your perspective on that, James?
Well, definitely wherever they have the media's ear, wherever they can impact the most people is usually where they play out, you know, these dramas and these games, because they really want to knock people down into fear and hold them in a position of okay, yeah, take care of it. You know, this is too big for me. I don't know what's going on. You guys take care of it. So all of these places, you know, sending the Enterprise over there to Iran, you know, in the Gulf there, is definitely, you know, that ship was meant to be scrapped, you know, and it's got nuclear reactors on it, everything else. It's meant to be mothballed. Why did they send it there? Because it's a lot cheaper to just sink it and then use it as a false flag operation to say, oh, those bad Iranians blew up, you know, our ship, and we've seen that scenario played out again and again and again in history.
Yep.
You know, with sinking ships and then finding out that we were the ones that sank them.
That's right, or arming the enemy. There's so many different, you know, scenarios. You know, pick up the gun, and we know the story. The Enterprise, I agree with you. That's interesting that they're sending that there, and Israel is so trigger happy, and they're so eager to just fire those nukes, aren't they? What do you think will happen on a world scale? Maybe from the perspective of the ETs that are potentially watching us as well. Will they just sit idly by? Will they allow this to happen? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what's happened in the past. In the past, they've been in an observer mode. They've been doing a lot of inspiration on a mental, emotional, and spiritual levels, trying to turn us in a proper direction, you know, so we would start living in harmony with each other and the planet. That was the way they worked in the past, and because they had to honor free will. The benevolence won't trespass on free will, which is another story I'd like to get into, because some of the fundamentalists were saying, you're inviting them, you know, you're inviting. I go, well, prayer is an invitation. You know, you're inviting God and Spirit to come and act on your behalf, you know, so. That's right.
And I always wondered, by the way, James, I'll let you continue on that, but sure. What is it that we're inviting? Are we in true understanding of what it is, either if we think about it from the point of view of God or ET for that matter as well? I think it works both ways.
Well, basically, the old saying is the mind in which you seek is the mind in which you connect. And so if you're coming at it from an extremist fundamentalist level, you know, you're going to see everything as God or the devil, and the earth is it, and nothing else exists beyond that reality. And so basically you shouldn't even involve yourself in this stuff. You know, you should just stick to your program, and that's fine. But the problem with that is that if you are focused on love and joy and bliss and service to humanity, and that's the energy field that you're carrying, and you set your intention to connect with those of like mind that are also in service to humanity, that are of a much higher frequency or vibration, that's what you're going to bring in. And I think globally, that's something we should be doing right now on a very big level. You know, there's all of these Fire the Grid programs and world healing meditations and all of these things. If enough of us were focused on that, the frequencies alone that would be coming in and the help that would be coming in could totally turn the planet around very, very quickly. And also tyranny could not exist in those fields. And that's basically what's happening. The consciousness of tyranny and enslaved through dependency and separation, those belief systems and those who hold those belief systems are no longer frequency specific to where the planet's evolving. And the more we can work on that level, on raising the frequencies of ourselves and the planet, and do it collectively, then we can actually turn this whole scenario around.
Very interesting. I heard Leonard Schlein today, the author of The Alphabet versus the Goddess. Interesting work. And he compared the development or the progress, I guess, in a way, of the human species kind of on a curve ratio and compared it to that of a caterpillar getting ready to being turned into a butterfly in one sense, because we have two things happening if we look at the development curve, because things have moved so quickly, James, forward on such a short time. We have a history of, for millions of years, nothing is happening, and then boom, you have a spike in the curve. And two things he said either might happen there. One, the system as it exists collapses, or a transmutation takes place. Something else happening when the species goes into another mode, basically. And this could be maybe not the technological singularity, but a singularity of, as we talked about here, kind of consciousness and spirit in a sense. But how do you view that? Where do you see us going? Because something has to give in a way. We can't just be on the curve in the current form that we're on right now and expect things to just go idly, slowly forward. That doesn't seem to be the case, James.
No, definitely. What's happening right now, we're in a time compression. And just as you were saying, it seems like things are really speeding up because time is actually going through a compression. So a lot more events and things are unfolding. A lot more lessons are being learned in a very short amount of time. In the old days, basically you were raised on the farm. Let's take one example. You worked on the farm, you helped build it up, and then you inherited it, and you got married, and that was it. That was the program. And nowadays you'll see that people are having multiple jobs, multiple residences, multiple farms, you might say, even multiple relationships and marriages, and it's all about evolution and getting our karma, cleaned up and out of the way. So everything is speeding up exponentially. And I think we are going to have this grand finale coming up around 12, and then it's going to be on the downward cleanup after that, after the big 21st event, somewhere around there. But I don't think we can nail it down to exact time, because we all have our own clocks. And I also see too is that both can be going on. Some people's worlds are going to totally implode, and they're not going to work anymore. They're just going to collapse. And that means their relationships, their jobs, and everything else. The people that totally refuse to evolve and flow with the Earth and her evolution are going to have an implosion, you might say, or they're going to be on the downward spiral, the negative spiral. And those who choose to flow with this are going to be creating a whole new world, and they'll be on the upward spiral. Things manifest much faster. The abundance, the universal law comes into effect with them, and the ultimate law, basically, almost all law goes back to source or God or ecumenical, and then it gets twisted and distorted from there. But basically Jesus laid it out, if you believe in Jesus or any of the other masters. But they said, there's one law that lie all the laws and the prophets. It's in the law of love. Love Creator with all your heart, love your neighbors yourself, and it's really that simple. But I think there should be a third law in there that just says, honor the Creator in all creation. Honor the sacred circle of life. And if we got back to those three basics, we'd be fine. And there are people that are living according to universal law, which is a much higher law, and they're actually growing and expanding and creating a whole different world, and they're being challenged all along the way by the old guard, the old system.
And that's an interesting point, because to me it seems like we have two different system then, because I agree with you in the words of what allegedly Jesus said there, that we have a law that is, or the law needs to be alive, rather. It's written on the heart. The moral code is dynamic, but what we have is a clash or collision with these men in usually in black and white of the colors of ink and paper, actually, about written word or the written law, that this is something carved into stone almost, in a sense, and it's dead in that sense. And,
Jesus said that. He said, ye search the scriptures in vain, for I speak of a living God. And that's what he, and that's what a lot of things are based on out of Rome. Our law basically is held in Rome. And he said that. He said, don't search for God in the mountains, or the temples, find it within yourself.
Yeah.
everything he said was totally opposite of what we're doing right now.
And the basic overall message of how Christianity has been carried forward, which is a very interesting turnaround, how that panned out. But where are we going in this, in a sense, then? Because the collapse as well that is taking place is kind of, to me anyway, it's happening kind of slow as well. And we have multiple destinies with totally different outcomes playing out, as you said before, at the same time, if you will. But where do you think this is going overall, though? Is this about a winning side and a losing side, or is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, it's a little more complicated, I would say. A lot of us, when we do our research, we find out that the church is out of Rome, and mainly the Pope are supposed to hold down the religious end of things, and the law, basically. England has the financial side of things, and they're in charge of the financial end of things, and believe it or not, America is in charge of the war industry and the war, or the military aspect of it. And when you do the research, you find out that these big three are working together under another order, whatever you want to call it, Illuminati, New World Order. And people are becoming aware of this, that they all support each other and hold everything in check. But I think we're evolving out of that, and we're seeing the church just being undone with all the pedophile, all the dirty stuff is coming out of the closet. The backgrounds of a lot of the popes and things like that are coming up, and so we're seeing that being undone. And actually, bottom line, we were talking earlier about that, is that the church was actually supposed to be passed on to Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary in that group, the feminine side of things. And that's where actually Jesus hung out mostly, is with the feminine side of things, because the men were just too they weren't heart-centered. They're more mind-centered and patriarchal, and they weren't based in love, which is what his teachings were all about. But we'll see. You really think about it, okay, the churches what were they created for? They were really created to help us make our own creator connection, God connection, whatever you want to make it. They're there to help the poor and help with poverty, and they're supposed to be a communal thing to assist those less fortunate. Well, they totally strayed away from that program, 100% almost. Yeah. There's a little bit of that just for show. There's a little bit of soup kitchens here and there and things like that, but done for show. And I totally commend those that are doing that. There are certain groups that are actually doing that. And that's what we need, to hold those groups on high and support those groups, and maybe take our funding away from the other groups that are into the total control and material acquisition and creating a go-between, so people can't make their own connection. The same thing with the monetary. Look what's happened. There's trillions of dollars that have been stolen from America, sitting over there in England with just a couple people, and that's all coming down. We're finding out that those we've trusted to take care of our currency needs, to keep a good flow of abundance and circulation going, have totally betrayed that trust and sold us down the river, and that's hit the apex of greed. I mean, it's beyond anything imaginable when people see where that's been taken. And you really look at the military. Our Defense Department is really an offense department, which is in control of the corporations. So our military has become the brute squad for the corporations. And if you do a poll, whenever they do these polls, they said how many people are for the Iraqi war. 93% of the people said no. I'll bet if you ask the people how many people are for attacking Iran or Libya or any of these other countries, they would all say no. It would be high 90s plus if you take a legitimate poll. And so basically, if the people are not in control of the military here in the United States, then who is? Because they're going completely contrary to the will of the people. And I'm all for a Defense Department, but let's create a Defense Department. Let's defend America. Yeah,
you should have the troops in your country, not abroad where they can't defend it.
Exactly.
Well, and this preemptive stuff, by the way, that's just bull crap as well. I mean, that doesn't work. That actually creates terrorism and creates more wars out there. So it doesn't work, you know?
Oh, yeah. I always tell people, I said, well, think about it. What creates a terrorist? Let's say if somebody showed up, you know, on our doorstep armed, you know, flew in and said, we're taking over and, you know, all your businesses and everything else. How many people would pick up a gun and say, hell no? You know, it's like, I'm going to live free on my own property and my own land and my own business in America. So basically, we would all be terrorists, and pretty much are anyway now with the new legislation. But
it's ridiculous. And by the way, some of these where the centers are for these are these so-called microstates as well. I just want to mention that we have the Vatican City, which is a microstate in itself, where you know, the head of the seat of the Roman Empire. This is what controls the law. And then we have Washington D.C., where the military, as you mentioned before, is run from, and then finally City of London. There are more of these, of course, like Malta is a microstate as well. There are other ones, but these are the three primary ones, I think, or four then. City of London from England, where they run the economics, as you say, from, and the administration, it seems, of the system. So it might be one of these interesting situations as well, where legally they actually manage to get away with it in one sense, because it's actually not against the law, because it's run by these microstates. But I don't know, James. We'll see how this pans out. There's some interesting developments happening right now with people like James Blackheath. About the investigation of the the House of Lords in London about this potential white hat organization, corruption to $16 trillion. I haven't followed the whole story yet. There's just so much more to it. But have you heard about this one, James?
Oh, definitely. You know, the whole program, you look at the big picture, you know, the whole program, basically America and the beliefs here in the United States of, you know, we're supposed to be in a republic. And in a republic, everybody is king. And as long as you're not harming anybody else, you're free to do as you wish, as long as you're not destroying the environment or harming anybody else, basically. And but we switched to this democracy, and we gave our power away to this little area called Washington, D.C., which is really doesn't have jurisdiction in the rest of the United States, if you really look at it and do the research. But you know, that's the problem right now, is that we've acquiesced, we've given them power, we haven't paid attention, and we've allowed them to just run amok. And now they're passing, you know, what's this NDA 1867, where they can arrest you and hold you indefinitely, ship you off to Guantanamo just for being belligerent, basically. There's a new one out now, I guess, that says that they can take away your citizenship and deport you if you start what do you call it? You know, doing the Occupy movement or whatever else.
Protest, basically.
Yeah. Any of this, that they can take you out, and now they have a new one. Well, they have the FEMA camps now set up too. The HR 645. That is another one where they've created all these FEMA camps, which you go up to the people who sponsored these bills and you say, what about this bill? Jesse Ventura did. He goes, there is no bill. That never happened. But the bill is sitting right there, you know, and the camps are there too. So we're hitting that. What I see is that we're hitting that apex of where people are awakening very fast, very quickly. The whole universe is in support of this. The higher levels are all in support of this, whatever you want to call them. Angelic realms, you know, the creations, realms of creation, all those that are service-oriented, that are here to, that operate under universal law, are in support of going back to that, you know, going back to Eden, basically. And the earth itself has chosen to go, you know, back in that direction. So I just see that we're in the apocalypse program, where everything is uncovered. That's what apocalypse stands for, the great uncovering. Everything is being uncovered. We're all seeing everything for what it is. All the dirty laundry and shenanigans and are coming up. And we're moving into unity consciousness, where this is just no longer going to be acceptable or functioning, you know, those old programs. So those empires will definitely implode, and people are wise to them now, and realizing that, you know, we do have a right to live a thoroughly loving, joyous, abundant life, and the possibilities are all there. to do that. I mean, everything is here on the planet to do that. All we have to do is remove those who are stopping that progression, that natural progression.
The middle hand, those who are holding everybody else down because they themselves, I believe, can't rise to another level. So instead of actually trying and focusing the energy on trying to better yourself, they just simply spend their time on holding everybody else down instead, which is, it's a ridiculous and childish approach. But in any regard, that's why we're seeing, I think, a rush to get these systems and laws and structure in place right now before, things really start to unfold and happen here. But I don't know, I'm still positive at the end of the day as well. I bet you are as well, James, that it doesn't mean that a lot of bad things potentially might not happen, but I think... I think it's going to be the turnout is going to hopefully be positive on all this. That's what I feel anyway. I don't think they're going to get everything in place in time before enough people actually are hopefully woken up a little bit because of this. What do you think?
Well, basically, if you watch the people that are trying to pull this off, their empires are collapsing right now. They're not even functioning on a very high mental or emotional level. You can see them just giving away, slipping all the time, giving away the program, spilling the beans on themselves, and their inner structure. People are waking up, like we're saying, the white hats within the system, and just saying and calling it out and exposing all of this. So it's basically they are their own worst enemies. I mean, I'm not here to spread hate or anger towards these people. They just need to evolve and realize that, resistance is futile. The earth is going to evolve and move to the next level. All they're doing is creating a lot more karma and a lot more problems that for themselves, which are going to eventually implode on them and either take down their empires or their own physical bodies, basically. And it's all self-created. And so at any moment they could shift and awaken and go, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. I only feel good when I'm helping people, when I'm seeing people in their own joy and their own love. And there's plenty of love and joy and abundance and material need for everybody here on the earth. I don't need to run this program anymore. And if they really look at their lives, there is no love or joy in their lives. The people don't love them. They hang out with them for what they can get. They're like, what are those feeder fish that hang around sharks? They hang around them just to grab the scrappings. And eventually when they die, those fish are going to eat them too, and so, so basically it's the life that they've created is they've imprisoned themselves. They don't have any freedom. They don't have any love, any joy. They've got to be surrounded by bodyguards. They have their castles. And they're surrounded by people that are just waiting for them to slip up so they can take over their empire. What kind of life is that?
You're right. There's a lot more to this, and some of this I want to get into as we carry on here in a little while. In the next segment, James. It's a very interesting conversation. We have much more to discuss, of course. But before we take a little break, let's talk a little bit about your website. And also, you have some new films that have come out, something that is new from last time we talked. There's a couple YouTube versions, but there are also some DVDs and stuff out there. And I think you've revamped your website a little bit as well. So tell us about that.
Yeah, we're in the process of redoing the whole website, and we've got, the books, Reunion with Source and Becoming Gods, cover all of this. Believe it or not, they're written in 1982, and they cover everything from the sun expanding to, this process we're undergoing to the international banksters and their game and everything. And this was all written about in 1982, but it's quite interesting. And it also covers the ancient history of Earth that we really need to know, and the true nature of God, basically, because we all have an image of God, you might say. We have this image of a little old man with a beard, on a laptop, taking notes and punishing those who are good and who are bad. And it just doesn't work that way, because we've been extremely interfered with. And we have a schizophrenic image of God that, one, he's all loving, all forgiving, and it's a he, it's actually beyond that. But the other image is that he's jealous and wrathful, and you'll never appease him. You know, you're never going to add up or become perfect, you might say. And that's a very schizophrenic concept. But if you really understand how we got those images, if you knew our real history in the past, you would see how, you know, even in Christianity, it's split. There's people that believe in an all-loving God, you know, an all forgiving God, and focus on love and joy, and try to serve their community and serve each other. And there's other people that have an iron fist, and God will punish you, and if you don't do this, and they use it to manipulate and control people. So we really need to go back and realize where we got those images, and get beyond that. We have to ask, who created them? You know, who created these gods of the past? You know, did they have a mother? Obviously they did. You know, they actually ate and drank and took our fatted calves and our best, you know, our best wine and our best herbs. You know, they had no problem with that. And so, you know, we need to really look at that and just say, well, wait a second, who created them and gave them an identity? And is there something beyond that? And that's what I've written extensively about, is the ancient history, and then what's going on now with a major warning about, you know, where the future's going if we don't wake up.
Yeah.
But and a lot of tools, a lot of powerful tools and techniques for healing any unseen negative influences and staying clear, you know, to get your information. But those have been there. There's DVDs of international speakers around the world that have come to the ranch and given lectures at conferences and things like that. And then we just released Eceti Ranch, a documentary that came out. And then there's a UFO Mountain is one that's coming up too with John Kelly. He's getting ready to release a new one that shows all the latest footage, you know, of the ships coming in very close, and people reacting to the ships, and, you know, 200 people on the ground when these ships come in, and with cameras and filming them, and intention experiments where we ask them to come in these beautiful pink colored light ships, you know, fly right over the conference building with 200 witnesses, with international speakers there. You know, like William Henry, who was funny when he saw when one flew right over the conference building, he was just jumping up and down like a excited kid, you know, just saying. And he looked at me and he goes, God, you're not doing anything, right? And he goes, you see this all the time, do you? And I go, yeah, this is pretty common here. But you know, it's Mary Rodwell was here, Dolores Cannon, Brooks Agnew, you know, all the exopolitics people have been here and have seen the ships. I can go on and on, you know, with the people that have been here, very high level people, very notable people. But what's interesting too, is we can get in the next hour, is that despite all of this, we're probably one of the most censored groups in ufology there is.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. We can talk about that when we return after the break. Again, on the website I want to mention is eceti.org, and you have basically all the information right there on the front page, and of course a menu both on the right and left for more information. Indication that this was kind of going on in the local community around you guys when it comes to them maybe not liking, for whatever reason, what you guys are doing there. Has the pressure on that then gone up? Is that what you're saying? And have you been able to you know, hold these people back, or what's going on there?
Yeah, basically, you know, due to the work of Nate and Spencer and Dean Clifford and people like that, we've actually been able to hold it back. And the local people, what's really interesting, are very much behind us. I just met with a whole group of the town locals here, the old patriarchs, you might say, and you know, I got the total thumbs up. They said, keep going, you know, we've seen them, we know they're here, our whole family's seen them, you know, keep telling the truth. And so even in some of the fundamentalist aspects of this, you know, these people are actually behind us, which is amazing. And they really like that we are, you know, making a stand for our own basic freedoms and rights. So on that level, we have total support. They had special meetings. They had 2 major meetings for a conditional use permit, and not one person spoke out against us. So, you know, you would think, you know, and they really publicized it. So basically, we have the the full support of the town. Really helps them out economically and in other ways as well. They love the people that come here to the ranch. They're always very pleasant and they're very they tip well and keep the economy going here. So basically, there's just a couple people that have some strong religious beliefs and some very good old boy networks that have picked up the sword and are just playing out their own personal agendas, which is really illegal on every level.
It's amazing people have the time and the energy, and specifically in these times, to focus on these issues when you guys are you are minding your own business. You're not harming anybody. It's just it's ridiculous to me, James.
Well, it's an extreme waste of public resources as well, and taxpayers' money, to do things like this. They could be repairing the roads and doing some other things of that nature, but they squander these resources on these totalitarian programs that they're running.
When did you guys have this snowstorm, by the way? Because I've heard. It's good to talk to you once again, James. How have you been, and what's going on up there in the at the ranch, rather, at the foot of Mount Adams?
Oh, we've had some major challenges like everybody else, it seems, but we've had some pretty intense legal challenges where we've had certain groups over here tell us that basically we don't have any right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to practice our spiritual beliefs, and no right to privacy, things like that. And so we've had to kind of hold our own on that, like most Americans are, having to set some boundaries, saying enough's enough. But, that being aside, we went through a snowpocalypse up here as well with some, heavy snowstorms followed by rain and ice. And a lot of the trees here actually snapped in half and came down like missiles. We got through, one went right through our roof on our meditation building. And yesterday I just finished the repairs on that. But it's been quite a challenge, on every level, not just social economic level, but the physical levels as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that right now. Last time we talked, James, there was winter. Obviously, there was a big freeze and a lot of snow, a big dump of snow over certain parts of Europe, actually further south than we are. Right here up in Sweden right now. But what do you think all this is about? Is it tied into what's going on right now? We have massive solar activity happening at the moment of this recording anyway, so I hope the line holds, by the way.
Yeah, X-class flare coming in. We've had, it's a combination of things. One, I don't know if you've ever had Susan Joy Renison. Have you had her on your show?
Sure have, yeah.
Yeah, she's an astrophysicist, but she is onto it on the physics side of things and actually understands that we are going through a time of great change. We used to be getting hit by outside energy bursts, coming into our system probably maybe 50 times a day. Now it's up to 500. And we are coming into an alignment with galactic plane, which has huge magnetic fields that are involving the sun, which is actually creating this solar maximum that we're going through. NASA keeps saying, it's going to tone down. Their lead guys now are saying, nothing's going to happen. It's going to.
From a lot of people around the world talking to them, it's been fairly mild this year overall. Same thing here. But when did the snow, hit you?
Well, this was probably, I'm really bad on time for some reason, but because up here at the ranch, every day is kind of like the same. We don't go by calendar so much, and other than being on radio shows like this one, I wouldn't even know what day it was. But it was probably last month. We're still, we've been cleaning up. We're still cleaning up the disaster, and we're still having light, some winds and flurries of the snow, but I would say about a good month ago, it hit really hard here, and I've never seen so much damage. It looked like Godzilla, came up the highway and just snapped every tree and every telephone pole, and we had 9 days without power here, and they had crews from everywhere here, as far as California, were here actually trying to repair the damage. So it was pretty extensive.
It's really chaotic times in a way. It's been, as I said, mild primarily this